As organizations and directors of organizations, you need to be doing more to prove your cyber resilient. I've got cyber essentials, I've got cyber insurance, I'm covered. No, you're not anywhere near covered. It's the most basic you could possibly get. How does a business operate? How does it work? How does the lead to cash process actually operate in that business?
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we explore the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, a strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful companies like yours with hands-on marketing, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Today, we are fortunate enough, we have Glen Williams on the Growth Switch podcast. He is a seasoned CEO with 2 private equity exits. He is now leading Cyberfort Group as they tackle the evolving challenges of cybersecurity, compliance, and resilience in a high-stakes world. Exciting stuff. Glen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you.
For sure. Nice to meet you as well. And thank you so much for your time. Now, I would love to hear more about you and your background and what got you into cybersecurity.
Sure. So I've always been involved in technology for a long, long time. Not necessarily cybersecurity, but in technology businesses. My formative years I spent in Dell, learning in sales roles, moving into Lenovo and into other technology businesses. I was appointed as a CEO in 2015. And from there, of a unified communications business. And I got into the world of private equity and growing companies, doing M&A, which I was quite successful in doing, and sold a couple of businesses along the way, as you said, a couple of exits. And then cybersecurity, my ethos, I guess, in this space, certainly in the UK, has been you kind of got the big players in any marketplace, be it cybersecurity, be it unified communication, be it networking. You have the big players in the space. Then you typically have a lot of smaller individual companies, but kind of upper mid-market customers or lower enterprise customers have got a requirement that's, the capability of the big guys, but the agility of the smaller guys. And I've always found that niche in the marketplace. So I did that in unified communications, I did that in networking, and then cybersecurity was the next on the rank, I guess. And I was looking to do a buy and build in this space, and people heard about it, and they said, well, actually, it's kind of been done with this business called Cyberfort. Can you come and have a chat? Because they need a CEO. So that's how I ended up as a CEO of Cyberfort, because it was the next natural progression of a market that hasn't commoditized. There are elements of it that are commoditizing, but hasn't commoditized. But it had that same kind of look and feel of, that mid-market enterprise, low enterprise customer needing to be looked after. And, the way I look at it is you'll be top 5 of our customer list rather than be number 200 of the big guys' customer list. So that's how we kind of position ourselves in the market, big enough to deliver, small enough to care. And that ethos has kind of been where I've gone with my career. And that's what takes me today. And that's why I'm loving running Cyberfort.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. And they're lucky to have you. So what do you think is one of the most overlooked factors in successfully preparing a tech business for acquisition, since you have experience in the tech world and you have that M&A experience?
Yeah, so I think that people, the biggest thing we've just done an acquisition ourselves, actually. We've just acquired a pen testing business quite recently. The biggest challenge that people forget is people, and the cultural integration of any company is the biggest challenge. So I think there are 2 things that people don't look at as well as they should do. Because you do commercial due diligence, financial due diligence, all that kind of stuff. One is how does a business operate? How does it work? How does the lead to cash process actually operate in that business? It's quite difficult to get under the hood of it. People do financial due diligence, legal due diligence. That doesn't tell you how a business runs, how it operates. I think that's really good if you can do that. And the second piece, so it's operational kind of, how does the business operate? The second piece is then the people. Culturally, where do they come from? Are they going to be happy to be part of a bigger organization? Because typically the acquisitions I've done are smaller companies, bringing them into a bigger business. How are they going to adapt to that? What's in it for them? Because the people who typically have founded the business will then disappear off into the sunset and sit on a beach. It's the people who are left behind. It's like, right, they were often in smaller businesses, they were the project manager, they did pre-sales, they did sales, they did various, did 3 roles, and they like that. And then suddenly you say to them, well, actually, you're part of a bigger business now. You can't do all 3 things. You can just do one. And they quite like doing 3 things. So cultural fit is really important to make sure the people who are joining the business kind of buy into the culture that you're trying to take out there, and that they're not going to just do something different. One of the things we've done at Cyberfort very quickly, you might not be able to see my Cyberfort polo shirt. I've come branded for the session. Is we gave everybody in the company, we just bought, polo shirts, everything. We're changing that mouse mats, everything you could expect. Backpacks to make them feel like they're part of the company. You change the name on the door really quickly. You try and even change the office space. Often I've done acquisitions because otherwise you've got people just coming into the same office they came into before with the same polo shirt, doing the same things. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
So you need to make people feel like something's changed. So I think it comes down to how does a business operate and the culture of the business. People overlook those things when they're considering buying a business.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really insightful if anybody is considering becoming a part of that acquisition process. So, with the Cyberfort Group, you emphasize proactive resilience over reactive compliance. And I think that there's a big difference between those two things. So, do you mind sharing a story where that particular mindset helped you help a client to avert a particular disaster?
Yeah, so we do both things. So what makes us unique as a company is a company of our size and scale. So we've got about 200 people in the UK and a few people in the US. What makes us different is kind of our end-to-end cybersecurity capabilities. In the cyberspace, most people of our size will do one or two things. They'll do consulting, so that resilient, that kind of compliance bit. They'll do pen testing, again, it goes in the compliance piece. And then they might have a SOC, so an MXDR service, a managed service. And then we've obviously got our own data center, which I'll touch on in a second. The first two pieces there are really compliance-based things. Here's where my problems are. Kind of the MXDR or SOC is a managed service finding problems before they happen. And that's kind of what makes us unique. Where people join us on that journey, it doesn't really matter. So we've got companies in the UK that have started taking a virtual CISO as an example from us. So they've taken they want some advice from us. They want to give us a view about where their issue is. That's where most people start their journey with us, whether it's virtual CISO or it's a cyber maturity assessment, or it's tell me how I'm doing am I safe? That's the first. Am I safe from a compliance perspective? Then am I safe from an ethical hacking perspective? You've tried to test my systems and penetrate them. Am I safe? And we'll go and say to them, no, you're not. So I'd call this all proactive, even though it's compliance based, it's proactive. We're proactive, we're going to tell them where their problems are. Then what we're doing is then we're going to go and deliver a managed service. So we then manage all their assets and all the incidents that are coming in through our SOC. So we're proactively managing all that. So in essence, for all intents and purposes, it's going to be very difficult for someone to go and get into that system. Now, there's still the risk that someone might do something stupid and click on something they shouldn't click on. That can always happen, no matter how much training you do and what you do. But then what we're doing is we're continually backing up our customers into our own data centers. Now, our data centers, we're quite unique in the cybersecurity space in that we own our own data center. It's in a former nuclear bunker. So it's 30 meters below ground. It's unbelievably secure, physically secure. So one of them's in we own, and the other one's a backup data center, which is in a former US Air Force base in Greenham Common. And so highly, highly secure environments. So what we're able to do is continually back people up. So if someone does something silly, we still can get you up and running really quickly. So you asked for an example. We've got people who join us at all touch points in this. There isn't necessarily a one size fits all. We've got companies who they typically will come to us because they need to feel, one, more secure, but two, they're maybe not happy with what they've been provided from somebody else. Or three, they just want someone who can deliver this as an end-to-end service. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily one thing that customers have joined us in and said, look, you're proactively managing here versus the consultancy space. Typically, customers come to us and say, can you come and tell me if we're secure? And we'll go and say to them, yes or no. But then we don't just walk away. That's the difference, probably. Most companies will do the consultancy or pen testing. We then go, this is where you're not secure, and here's your solution. And then we go all the way through to incident response. So we'll negotiate with hackers. We'll negotiate with people as we need to and do a full incident response. So the way to think about Cyberfort is end-to-end cybersecurity service, and that makes us quite unique in this market for a company our size.
Yeah, brilliant. So how often would you say that you have audited certain companies when they come to you and they ask you for support? How often do you think that you've said, you're perfect? Like, you're hack proof.
None, never. And interestingly enough, what's happening now, again, I'll refer to the UK. You would have heard in Europe, there's something called the NIST 2 framework. In the UK, the Cyber Resilience Act is due out soon.
Yeah.
So as organizations and directors of organizations, you need to be doing more to prove you're cyber resilient. It's interesting, if you attend a board meeting, you always have a section on health and safety. There's always a section in the board minutes on health and safety. Actually, it's very rare you're going to trip over a cable. Health and safety is really designed for construction, and I know it's important in other areas, but you're much more likely to be hacked. So it's really interesting that most boards do not have a separate cyber part of their board meeting, which is what I think they need to do, because directors are going to be more and more responsible for making sure companies are what they're calling cyber resilient in the UK. And if you're not proved to be cyber resilient in the UK, what could happen is that you can be fined, I think it's up to £100,000 a day. for non-compliance. So
There it is.
you have to prove you've taken all the right actions to be as cyber resilient as you can be. And that act is coming into play in the UK in October, November time. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's pretty intelligent. You do see natural disasters that could be preventable. I'm in San Diego, so we get a whole lot of fires in California. And at some point, if you're not fireproofing your home and a wildfire occurs, it could go up in smoke and you could become a liability. And I think it's the same thing with cybersecurity. I think
correct.
that if you're not doing what you can preventatively and proactively to at least become resilient, you're a liability.
Well, that's exactly right. And what you'll find is that it's equivalent if you walk out your house and you've got your home insurance. People say, well, I've got cyber insurance. Okay. But your household insurance policy will probably say, you know, you can't leave your door open. You can't leave your windows open,
Yeah.
and that's probably the equivalent of what people are doing. They say, well, my cyber insurance will cover me. Well, not if you've left your front door open and, as an example. So
Yeah.
I think people need to think about it in that way, or even when you change your car insurance, have there been any changes to your car or anything, your situation? You have to disclose them.
Yeah.
So cyber insurance is the same. Insurance companies aren't set up to try and pay out as much as they possibly can for an insurance policy. That's not why they exist. So I think that they're there to protect people. However, if people haven't done the right things themselves, then the insurance company's not going to pay out on something. So people need to be more cognizant of it. That's the biggest thing. That's my biggest takeaway that I've noticed in the last probably 4 or 5 years is that it's changing a bit, but not quickly enough. And in the UK, there have been some recent attacks on Marks and Spencers and Co-op and other places. You might have seen this in the news. So the Marks and Spencers one's got a lot of traction in the UK because the impact could be up to £500 million in terms of lost profit. It's significant. People couldn't get food on the shelves. The M&S website wasn't up and running. You couldn't buy online for, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 weeks, something like that. So it had a significant impact on them. I think people are slowly kind of waking up and going, could be quite serious to our business. I don't think cyber is still seen as a cost to a business. You get your company audited. Every year your company is audited. You have your accounts and you get audited. Why would you not do the same for cyber? You need to be doing this. People's mindset needs to change. It is changing. And I can tell you, as a CEO sort of 5, 6 years ago, I would think, but in the UK, they've got something called Cyber Essentials, which is what the government mandates you have. And there's Cyber Essentials Plus. It's the baseline. It's the most basic cyber resilience you could demonstrate. It doesn't cost very much. So I thought as a CEO, I've got cyber essentials, I've got cyber insurance, I'm covered. No, you're not anywhere near covered. It's the most basic you could possibly get. So, and there's been too many examples now of people using deepfake solutions and various other things that, having significant impacts on people. You might have seen, there was one, it's quite a well publicized one with I think they're a consultancy company called Arup, ARUP, out of Hong Kong. It's on the web, it's kind of out there. And it was a deepfake of a finance meeting. And the guy thought he was on Teams. He thought his CFO was opposite him on Teams, asked him to transfer $23 million. So there were 3 or 4 other people from the finance function on this deepfake call. Or so he thought. $23 million later that he's transferred over, it was a deepfake. So,
My goodness.
and that was not the best deepfake we've ever seen. If you go and look into QR codes, I'm really conscious of when I go, and I'm very, very careful about scanning QR codes anywhere because QR codes are another way that people quite easily. We're all free to stay. We don't even think about it, do we? We go in and scan a QR code. That's fine. People in my company have demonstrated how easy it is to get into something through a QR code. So you've got to be vigilant, I think.
Yeah. And not even just vigilant, because there are threats out there, especially as AI is emerging so quickly in generative AI. There are threats that we just don't know. That if you're not an expert and you're not in the know, what you don't know that you don't know could actually completely tank your company. A
Correct.
big company might be able to take $500 million in lost revenue, but for most other companies, small to medium sized businesses, this kind of thing is going to just sink your ship, and you're going to be
100%.
potentially liable, as well, right? For
Correct.
you could be facing some pretty severe charges if you really mess up.
You've got to take it. People have got to take it more seriously than you do. I think there was a stat out recently. The boardroom, it's against a UK-based stat. I think it's gone down to from sort of 5 years ago, 38% down to 27% of people, kind of seriously taking cybersecurity seriously at a board level. But there's also has gone up to 72% of people that realize that they should be taking it more seriously. So as people know they should be doing more, but they just kind of aren't. And I have to say to you that we're owned by a private equity company. We now are engaged with every single one of their portfolio companies because, if something happens to one of those portfolio companies, and there are examples of this in the UK, that the company was worth something and then 6 months later it's worth nothing. So, these are significant investments they've made in their businesses, and these are mid-market companies. And the risk in these companies is that they've got an IT director who is probably an IT manager who was with them from the start and has been promoted up. He's not a cybersecurity expert. He's typically an infrastructure guy. And, like you say, if you're playing cat and mouse, which is what this is, with people who are experts in this space, people trying to get into your network, you're always going to struggle. So you do need to work with specialists in this space, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, with that analogy, if you're going to play cat and mouse, wouldn't you rather play the cat than the mouse?
Yeah, exactly. You'd rather always be the cat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The mouse is a
But
losing situation.
it is. The mouse is always he's gonna come off worse. So just
Yeah.
watch Tom and Jerry. Although Tom and Jerry is probably not a good example, but I know.
Yeah. So, all right, before Cyberfort, you've held CEO roles across different sectors in IT.
Yeah,
And what are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned that you think, hold up over time? Because this field has changed quite a bit. But, what to you has stuck out as something that's simply like evergreen?
yeah. It's always all about the people, and I know it sounds easy to say that. Typically, if you're going in the private equity space, so private equity organizations buy companies to buy other companies, build them on, create value, and sell them. That's what they exist to maximize shareholder gains or stake shareholder gains. So people know that when you're coming in as a CEO of a PE-backed business, so you have to gain the trust of people. That although, yes, your primary job is to make the business successful and make money for your shareholders, you also want to look after your employees and your customers. So I always say I've got three people I keep happy other than my family. I've got to keep my customers happy, my employees and my shareholders. So how do you keep your employees happy and content when you've gone and done this, and how do you build that trust? Build that trust is the most important thing. I was lucky when I ran Demovo, which was primarily a German-based business. I speak German. I think if you can speak local language, if you're doing an international role, that breaks down so many barriers that you wouldn't believe. Because all of a sudden, this English guy rocks up, and typically in England, we're not renowned for learning languages outside of English. Suddenly rocks up and starts speaking German to them. It made a huge difference and broke down so many barriers. So if you're ever doing an international role, you've got to throw yourself in at the deep end. If you can't speak the language culturally, you have to throw yourself in at the cultural end of things. We had entities in Poland, in Switzerland, and you just have to be prepared to kind of embrace what their culture is and what goes on. And I think that helped build trust. So the first thing, it's all about the people. It's all about building trust. You've got to get people on side. The second thing is you've got to keep it simple. I try and keep things as simple as possible. So I look at my three things I look at. You've got to have the right value propositions. If you've got the right thing to go and sell, if you've got the wrong thing to sell, no one's going to buy it anyway. Is what you've got, what people want. The second thing is you've got to have the right people. And so, which is what I touched on immediately. You've got to have people, this is a balance of will and skill. As well as having the technical skills or the skills to do their role, they've got to have the drive and the motivation to want to go and succeed. So right value proposition, right people, and I call it right structure. When I talk about right structure, I mean right setup, right hygiene factors. So what does that mean? If you're in sales, it's having the right commission scheme. If you're in, it's having you set the right conditions for people to be motivated in. So I can't motivate anyone. I cannot motivate anybody. But what I can do is I can create the conditions for people to be motivated in, because that motivation has to come from within. That's what I genuinely believe. So there's no way I'm going to get you to do something if you don't want to do it, other than, put a gun to your head. But, I'm not going to be able to get you to do it. But I can create the conditions for you to want to do it and to want to be successful in it. And that's what my role is. So that has been pervasive in everywhere I've gone. Right value proposition, right people, right structure. And the value proposition piece I always think about is people trying to do too many different things. Are we good at it? Can we make money out of it? Does the market need it? It's as simple as that. Because there are so many times people say, well, there's this great new thing coming out. Well, have we ever done it before? No. Do we have a track record? Do we have anyone who can do it? No. Well, why would we do it then? So just keep things pretty simple. Keep it simple. Don't try and be too clever with things. Treat people fairly and equitably. I think that's incredibly important. I've said this lots of times to people. I don't come into work to be liked. I come into work to be fair. And I think you treat people fairly, create the right conditions to be motivated in, create that bond of trust, knowing they're going to be treated fairly. I think that's leadership to me, and that's kind of I think that's pervasive anywhere you go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think that that's very noble. All right, so let's take this a step even further. So you've built the company, you've got a product that people absolutely need. You have a great team, and those are probably the most critical components, except for one thing. And that, of course, is connecting with customers. And there
Yeah.
are people out there who are still resilient to getting proper cybersecurity. They're resilient to learning about it. They're resilient to hiring somebody. As you said earlier, they see it as a cost rather than investment. So I think the next critical piece is like, how do you best connect with companies and show them you really need to have this in place?
So, I mean, this comes down to, I mean, we've got a three-prong kind of attack here. We've got this is SDRs, so desk-based people that go out there.
Yeah.
We've then got marketing, Marcom, and then we've got probably me and other people, more senior people connecting with people. So at those three levels, but what's the message you're taking out there? Because it's a similar message, but it's a message of, people talk about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it's the first one. That's the reality is that, fear sells, but, you need to make people aware of what the consequences are of not doing something here. So that's really how you position it. Look what happened to Marks and Spencers. Look what happened to and to be fair, there are so many examples out there now. You're not short on examples of what's out there. You have to just say to them, this is what happens if you don't go and make sure you're as secure as you possibly can be. And these companies probably all thought they were very secure. To be fair, they probably all spend a lot of money on cybersecurity, and there's still someone who's going to be able to there who's always a bit smart, who's trying to get. And there's going to be a requirement by law, certainly in the UK, that you have to prove you're cyber resilient. And if you can't, then there are going to be consequences. So, we've put some white papers out there and stuff, and some stuff on LinkedIn about why cyber essentials isn't enough. And we're being provocative, but we're trying to sort of warn people that if you don't do this, whether it's us or somebody else you work with, you're going to have to do something here. So I think the tide is turning in this space. I genuinely do. I think also what's going on the macro side of things, and the threats that are coming from certain parts of the world, people are more cognizant of that now as well. Particularly, since the recent wars and all that, I think people are much more cognizant of the fact that cyber is used as a, So I think people recognise that now. The penny is dropping. It's just I think it needs to drop a bit quicker.
So with Cyberfort, what is the differentiator in the market to let a company know we are probably going to be a good fit for you because we offer something a little bit different than everybody else? What's a really good reason, other than the fact that everybody should have cybersecurity? What's a good reason that a company should be working with you right now?
Yeah, so we've got some very big corporate organizations that work with us, and big public sector organizations that work with us. They typically they will take a part of what we do. They'll take a small service. Maybe it's penetration testing, maybe it's some consultancy. It goes back to who's your target addressable market. So our target addressable market, that I've mentioned it before, that kind of upper mid-market, low-end enterprise customer space. I don't know if you're talking between 1,000 users or something like that space. What is our unique proposition to them? It's that we are one of the probably only a very, very small number of organizations. And I mean, maybe on one hand, if you're lucky, they can deliver. You can give your cybersecurity requirements to us, and we can deliver all of it for you. Most people, one throat to choke, whatever the term is that people use, we are a one-stop shop solution for cybersecurity, and most companies can't do that. Most companies can do a part of it. And if you're a IT director in a company with 500 employees, you've not got time to manage 10 different suppliers doing cyber and all pointing at each other. It's him or it's this person. What you want to do is give it to somebody and say, please, can you go and manage that for me and keep me safe and secure? And that's what we can do. And that's unique in this space. There's not many companies, because there's a handful of them that can do that.
And for all of the viewers, for all of the listeners, the links are going to be below. But Glenn, where can people connect with you? Where can people connect with the company?
So I'm on LinkedIn, if they want to connect with me personally. So Glen Williams on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find me there. I tend not to go on many other things. I tend to keep the LinkedIn I'm on. And the company, it's www.cyberfortgroup.com.
Great. Yeah, Glenn, thank you so much for your time and expertise. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it too. Really good conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.